Welcome to episode 142 of Bible Talk, a podcast brought to you by 9 Marks and Southern Seminary. My name is Alex Duke, and with me are my there are three friends in this room today.
Hallelujah. Sam Omadi, Jim Hamilton.
And on the camera we have Albert. What's your last name? So you know Albert.
He was dying to do this yesterday.
Alex has been waiting
When
for
we
this.
started this podcast 5 years ago, the man who edited it, his name was Alberto. And now we have Albert O. Is there ever any confusion between you and Albert M?
Who's Albert M?
Think about where we are.
Oh, I don't think. Yeah,
He's the upgrade.
No offense.
Albert O is the upgrade. All right. Guys, it is so good to be here. Albert O, thank you for serving us. He's the director of Southern Productions. That's your title, correct? And he's doing a wonderful job serving
Amen.
us. You got something to say?
yeah. Didn't you show us your props yesterday? Like
Yeah.
you showed us your piggy bank.
Well, I got my piggy bank, and then I got my master's gnome. And Jim,
Today I brought my
is very
C271 wooden baseball bat. I'm not going to threaten you with this.
is there a story behind that particular bat?
You know, I actually didn't swing this bat in college. When I moved to Louisville, I played briefly in a men's league. And there was a member of our church who gave me this bat. And then unfortunately,
Yeah, it's got a bad
I broke
crack in
it.
it. Look at
I
that.
caught one off the end, you know, but when the bat broke, one of the umpires said to me when I went back up to pick it up, he said, that bat went down like a warrior. So
This is a league where they used wooden bats, or were you the old man with the wooden
you
bat?
could choose either. Typically, there were wood bats on Sundays and then like maybe some aluminum through the week, but I tried to always swing wood.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's great. So, I mean, do you want to like lay it like up here, like Excalibur or something?
I think it'll be okay back over there.
I don't even think we can see it, but that's fine.
And I also brought a mug with the founder of Southern Seminary on it, James P. Boyce.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed, but yesterday I had John A. Broadus on a mug.
Sam, what'd you bring?
I haven't brought anything yet.
Sam is sporting some
kinda
swag
bored.
from
Oh, that's true. I
reaching
got
and
my
teaching.
reaching and teaching sweater on.
That doesn't-
And yesterday
that
you were
doesn't
wearing
count.
Pillar Network sweatshirt.
That's true.
But this
Yeah.
year
We
today you're
us in ministry. We like to wear free stuff that entities
just
with
give
big
us.
budgets give us.
Do you have all four mugs with all four founders?
Yeah, all four founders. Yeah. Yep.
All right. Episode 142.
All right.
Here we are. We're going to talk about 2 Kings 15. Last week, we talked about, we spent some time talking about authorial intent. We talked about the restoration of Israel, which Sam looked at me askance for even bringing up the possibility.
I know. I just didn't know what you were asking.
Yeah, that's fine. We talked about King Amaziah of Judah, Jeroboam II of Israel. Today, we're going to do 2 Kings 15. Now, this passage, this chapter, gives us 7 reigns of 7 kings, and they're all pretty short by comparison. We've got 5 bad Israelite kings in the middle, and then 2 good Judean kings. As you know, you can't think of it as like a sandwich. This is like a bad Israelite king sandwich with some good Judean king bread, right? Isn't that how that works?
There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Intercalation.
thought you would like that a little.
Intercalation is a word that's sometimes used for
Sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah. Intercalation.
Yeah.
I think I prefer sandwich.
Yeah.
So that's it's a very clear structure today. Anything you want to talk about before we just like hit the ground running?
Well, since you mentioned the structure, I just want to point out maybe
Do you
another.
prefer intercalation or sandwich?
You can talk about it however you want.
I know, but what do you want to do?
I'm kind of hungry. Let's talk about
Okay,
it like a sandwich. Just since we're talking about the structure, you're exactly right, Alex. You've got the kings of Judah at the top and at the bottom, Azariah and Jotham. And then I think as well you have some other correspondences and things going on in the middle. If you notice, this word conspired is used 4 times here in these 5 kings. You have it with Zechariah, Shalom, Pekahiah, and Pekah. You don't have it with Menahem, who is the middle king. So I do think there's probably a chiastic structure here where you have the king of Judah at the top and the bottom, and then you have 2
Judah,
kings.
conspiracy.
No conspiracy.
Middle dude. Conspiracy.
King of Judah.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. I'm also noting with interest we don't have our headphones on. Albert told us we didn't have to wear them, so I'm a little nervous about that. But
We're trying it out. We'll see how it goes.
yeah.
Stay close to your mic.
Yeah, stay close. Okay, So, Sam, why don't you start us? We'll start with the reign, the longest reign.
Sure.
Here, most of these reigns are quite short. A few are very short. So we'll start with King Azariah, who has another name.
And this is the reign that is not short. In fact, most of these Israelite kings are going to come into power and leave power all during the reign of Azariah, who's also called, even in this passage, Uzziah. And that's the name by which he's called in Isaiah 6. In the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, this is Jeroboam II, Azariah, the son of Amaziah, this is the king we read about in chapter 14, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 16 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jechaliah of Jerusalem, and he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, according to all that his father Amaziah had done. So we've had Joash, Amaziah, now Azariah, Uzziah, who all do what's right in the eyes of the Lord. But, verse 4, he follows their same pattern. Nevertheless, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and made offerings on the high places. So, again, this is, as Jim mentioned last time, in disobedience to what the Lord says in Deuteronomy 12, that he's going to establish a place at which he's worshipped. Now, in verse 5, we have a very short reference to a longer narrative that we're going to learn about in 2 Chronicles 26, where Azariah tries to offer a sacrifice at the altar and take upon himself priestly work. Verse 5, and the Lord touched the king so that he was a leper to the day of his death. So again, that's recorded in more detail in 2 Chronicles 26. But it again continues this theme that we've seen all through Kings. That is that the kings are often associated with sickness and with weakness, which is symbolic of where the kingdom is at itself in these days since David and since Solomon. The kings are sick, the people are sick, and this physical description of the king mirrors the spiritual state of the people. And he lived in a separate house. And Jotham, the king's son, was over the household, governing the people of that land. Now, the rest of the acts of Azariah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of Chronicles, the kings of Judah? And Azariah slept with his fathers, and they buried him with his fathers in the city of David. And Jotham, his son, reigned in his place. Again, we're going to come back to Jotham at the end of the chapter in verse 32. And then what follows, as you mentioned, Alex, is this rogues gallery of Israelite kings in the northern kingdom.
Rogues gallery. I like that.
Good work.
What do you want to say, Tim?
Yeah, a couple of notes. So, as you mentioned, Isaiah 6:1, it speaks of the year that King Uzziah died, and we know that is 740 BC. So this means if he reigned for 52 years, this means he reigned from 792 to 740 BC, and Jotham began to reign in 750. So I think that indicates that...
Where are you getting these dates? Just like historical reconstruction?
Yeah,
you don't have to do the math right now.
Yeah, there are different sources online. I think I sent you a PDF of a document that I found online with
I was going to make the joke that I didn't read it, but I actually did read it.
Yeah.
So that would be a lie.
Yeah. So Uzziah or Azariah here dies in 740. Jotham begins to reign in 750. I think this probably indicates that it's in 750. 10 years before his death, that he presumed upon himself to try to burn incense and was struck as a leper and then sort of removed to this separate house. And at that point, Jotham begins to reign. And just putting his timeline together, if he's 16 when he begins to reign and he reigns 52 years, so he reigns until he's 68, 10 years before he dies, he's 58 when he goes in and does that and then is stricken with leprosy.
So just so we're clear, this is the same guy in Isaiah chapter 6.
Correct.
Which I guess we're doing Isaiah.
Lord
next.
willing. Yeah, that's the plan.
Wow. Okay. So we've not too long before we get there. 2 Chronicles, however, will be many years from now.
So it's just to put Isaiah in its historical context as we're reading this chapter. This is the situation in which Isaiah was prophesying.
Yeah. Okay. Are we happy to? So we don't get much about this guy in the context of Kings. He was a leper. He's a pretty good king. We're ready to move on.
Long reign.
I would say he's a leper for the last 10 years.
Sure. Yeah.
58 to 68.
Yeah.
Prior to that, everything seems to have gone well.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to the series of 5 kings in Israel. So again, we're going to shift the camera, shift the perspective, and we're going to get this guy who's got a super short reign. Jim, why don't you do this one? Verse 8. I'm sorry.
Okay, so 2 Kings 15:8. In the 38th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Zechariah, the son of Jeroboam, reigned over Israel in Samaria 6 months. And he did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh, as his fathers had done. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. Shallum, the son of Jabesh, conspired against him and struck him down at Ibleam and put him to death and reigned in his place. Now the rest of the deeds of Zechariah, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. This was the promise of Yahweh that he gave to Jehu. Your sons shall sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. And so it came to pass.
Okay, so short reign, not a lot on it. I think what I'm most curious about is where the pattern departs would be that parenthetical in verse 12. So well, just remind us what that's referring to.
So there, there's a cross reference probably if you're looking at a Bible with cross references to chapter 10 verse 30.
That's right.
Where Jehu is told, go ahead, Sam.
And the Lord said to Jehu, because you have done well in carrying out what is right in my eyes. Remember, Jehu is the instrument of the Lord's judgment against the house of Ahab. And have done to the house of Ahab according to all that it was in my heart. Your sons to the 4th generation shall sit on the throne of Israel. And we've had Jehu, and then the 4 generations are Jehoahaz, Jehoash, Jeroboam II, and now we've come to that 4th generation in Zechariah.
And now this usurper has come and taken Jehu's family off the throne.
I think it's also worth commenting, if we were to sort of take each of these paragraphs on each of these kings and set them side by side and then align the different statements with one another, we would see that they all start with in the such and such year of such and such king, and maybe who their father is, maybe who their mother is. And then like this statement in verse 9, he did what was evil. In comparison with verse 3, he did what was right in the eyes of Yahweh. Yeah. And then when we get to verse 11, they all end this way. Now the rest of the deeds of Zechariah, behold, they are written. But you notice there's some missing elements in verse 11. Like we don't read in verse 11 what we saw in verse 7, Azariah slept with his fathers, and they buried him with his fathers. There's no statement like that about this fellow Zechariah.
Okay, so does that mean he's not buried somewhere?
Well, no. I think, of course, they buried him, but it's almost like there are aspects of the formula that are dropping out. And I think the idea is this is in keeping with the fact that he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And so his burial is not recorded. There's no reference to him sleeping with his fathers. He's a renegade. It's almost like we're not concerned with his death or where he is.
Well, it's like the book of Judges and the way the story is told in Judges. Yeah. You have this formula that you come to expect in which the people are oppressed. They cry out for mercy. The Lord sends a deliverer. The judge gives peace to Israel for a certain period of time.
The spiral.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And then
the spiral begins to break.
And then that formula begins to deteriorate, and pieces and elements of the formula all of a sudden show up missing later on in the book, which shows just how bad things are getting.
And I think also that concern with death or concern with burial is like concern for the seed to be planted. So it indicates an expectation of resurrection. So the fact that we don't read about, I'm not saying he's not going to be raised.
Given he died in a conspiracy, it's possible that the situation surrounding his death, he did not have probably a nice funeral, a dignified funeral.
Yeah, who knows? But I think he should not expect, as Psalm 1:6 says, or 1:5 says, it says, therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment. You could render it, the wicked will not rise in the judgment. And the Greek translation uses a form of the resurrection word, anastasomai or something like that.
Okay, great.
Yeah. I just want to point out as well, verse 12, again.
He just wants to point out this, which brings me some dark memories.
Which let me just throw in here.
Class though.
I wasn't. That has been. Okay. I was not. I was in the guy whose name I can't remember.
You should come to Southern Seminary and study live on campus in person, so that you can learn to read Hebrew.
Study residentially.
Yes.
Study the languages.
Amen.
Do as they say, not as I did.
So you studied residentially.
True.
And you took the language classes.
Yes.
And you passed. I remember
the hair of my chin.
I remember seeing you on graduation day. and you telling me something
Well,
like
this podcast is now sponsored by Southern Seminary. We should not, we should not drag my bad laundry for the lovely people who are helping us do this. I did take, in all sincerity, taking classes on campus was revolutionary for my. I took you, Steve Wellham, the things that I learned.
There's a great faculty here.
I would not exchange for anything.
And they're going to give you a piece of paper that says master's degree on it. You want to have earned that thing. And you want to do something hard. So give yourself to the biblical languages.
Absolutely. Verse 12. This is the word of Yahweh, which he spoke to Jehu, saying, the sons of the four, basically the sons of the four is the fourth generation. They will sit for you over the throne or on the throne of Israel. And then, Jim, this last phrase, Wayahicain.
And it was so.
And it was so, which reminds you of...
I don't know what you're reaching for.
So this
Genesis 1.
Oh, this is Genesis 1.
Yeah.
Boom.
God spoke and it was so.
And it was so. So this is the same phrase that's used repeatedly, I think 5, 6, 7 times in Genesis 1. I think this is instructive in connecting to a theme that we have seen develop all through the book in 1st and 2nd Kings, and that is the role of the prophets and the role of the word of the Lord plays a very significant role. All through the deterioration of Israel's history and their spiritual state in the books of 1st and 2nd Kings, we are regularly reminded by the appearance of these prophets through events like this, where we have record of a particular promise or judgment that the Lord has given, and it comes to pass, that the Lord's word is ultimately sovereign and ultimately reigning. And I think here we have a phrase that would evoke what the Lord does in creating the world in Genesis 1, and the idea being that even in Israel's deteriorating spiritual state, God's word has lost none of its potency. Just as it created the world in Genesis 1, so now it is still accomplishing its purposes in the reign of Jehu and the kings of Israel. And once again, the book is not just an apologetic for why it is that Israel's gone into exile. It's giving them a message of hope. It's telling them the path to resurrection, right? How is it that they're going to come out of the death of the exile back into the land, back into life? Well, it's trusting the word of the Lord. This is where God's power is revealed. And if they pay attention to the words of the prophets and do what the prophets say, repent of their sins and trust in God, the word of the Lord can grant life, because the word of the Lord is potent.
And just to chime in on that, I think we can also see that the author of Kings has intentionally used the exact phrase from Genesis 1. And this suggests that God's word of creation is the same word that is uttered when he makes a prophetic utterance. So in the same way that if he's going to say, let there be light, there's going to be light. If he's going to say to Jehu, it's going to be 4 generations, it's going to be 4 generations. And I was just looking at the various translations and the way they handle this. Even the New American Standard has, and so it was. I don't know what they do in Genesis 1, but I looked at the ESV. In the ESV, they do, and it was so in Genesis 1. Here they do, and so it came to pass. So I think seeing the point that Sam is drawing out is something that you're going to need to make recourse to the Greek and Hebrew. Actually, the CSB has, which the CSB is not normally literal, but it says, and it was so. And I think that's an indication that the CSB translation committee picked up this allusion and intentionally recreated the language of Genesis 1 to preserve the connection.
Yeah, so you might get the sort of dotted line connection through the various versions of what you read, but the fact that this is it's the straight
exact
line,
same phrase,
not actually a dotted line.
Yeah,
you really need either this
the Hebrew Bible
or a translation that in this case at least translates it the same way as it does in Genesis 1.
Yeah.
Okay,
there are some translations that don't even represent that phrase.
Wow. What does the Message say?
I don't have the Message on my screen, but the NIV says, so the word of the Lord spoken to Jehu was fulfilled. Your descendants will sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation.
Oh, so it inverts. It inverts it puts that at the front.
Well, I guess if you have so the word of the Lord, but you have hu devar Yahweh. This was the word of the Lord. So it seems to me the NIV just leaves that phrase out, which would be
unfortunate.
It's unfortunate, and it's a common. I think, practice of the NIV to just leave phrases out or words out.
Good job, Sam.
Yeah, nice work, Sam.
So, all right, let's move on, Sam, to the third king.
All right.
And we're going to see another departure from the pattern here that I want to ask about.
Okay. Verse 13, Shallum, the son of Jabesh, began to reign in the 39th year of Uzziah, king of Judah. And he reigned 1 month. So, we've just come off of a 6-month reign. And you thought...
It's like how long I worked at McDonald's.
Did you really? 6 months?
Actually, I don't.
Or 1 month?
I think I made it like 3.5 weeks.
Okay. Yeah. How old were you?
33. No, I was 16, I think. I just one day was like, I'm good. And I hung my uniform on the door and didn't show up for my shift.
I think I had a paper route for about
Speak of fear of man, I was like, I'm not even doing this confrontation. I'm out.
So he reigns for 1 month in Samaria. Then Menahem, the son of Gadi, came up from Tirzah and came to Samaria. Now, Tirzah, if you just kind of throw that in your concordance, esv.org and search Tirzah. If you go back to 1 Kings 14, 15, 16, Tirzah was originally the capital city of the northern kingdom. It's Samaria now, but the royal house used to be in Tirzah. And he struck down Shallum, son of Jabesh, in Samaria, and put him to death and reigned in his place. And then we're not told anything else about him. Now, the rest of the deeds of Shallum and the conspiracy that he made, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles, the kings of Israel. At that time, Menahem sacked Tifsah and all who were in its territory from Tirzah. So again, just throw Tifsah in your concordance. And if you do, you'll recognize that in 1 Kings 4:24, Tifsah is recorded as part of Israelite territory. Okay, so that's important for what we're about to read. This is not Gentile land that he's going into, but he's going to be dealing with fellow Israelites. All who were in it in the territory from Tirzah, because they did not open it to him, meaning they probably didn't welcome him or give him passage on his way to the throne, but there's some sort of opposition that he's receiving from Tifsah. Therefore he sacked it and ripped open all the women who were pregnant. So when you read that description, I mean, it's vicious and brutal and disgusting, and we need to read it in line with this type of pattern of violence against children that we've already seen in the Old Testament. It begins with the description of the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. That the serpent and his seed are always going to be engaged in some sort of violent warfare against God's people, and specifically against their children, their seed. And then we see that with Pharaoh, right? Pharaoh, attempting to kill, the firstborn of the Israelites. Well, now we have an Israelite king who's engaging in that same act of violence, but this time it's escalated. He is a worse figure than Pharaoh himself by not just going after these babies, but going after them in the womb. So this shows you just how low Israel has sunk and how low her kings have sunk. They are now worse than Pharaoh. This guy is the seed of the serpent.
So I mentioned this section departs from the pattern. You didn't flag it for us.
Help me see it. Maybe I'm missing something.
Well, it's not there. I can't help you see what's not there. That's what's missing.
Yeah, so verse 13, you don't have in the 38th year. I mean,
no,
it starts with Shallum as opposed to starting with in the 38th year.
No, it doesn't say that he did what was right or evil.
Yeah,
Which is a significant, I mean, maybe it's because his reign was so short, but Jim, it's more to your point, like things are dropping off. And that's that seems pretty important. The assessment of the king's reign, this doesn't even exist here. I mean, it's pretty obvious whether he was good or bad based on the details they give us. But again, the authors is letting that pattern slowly, just deteriorate as things, they're not too far now from their being conquered in exile.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, let's just put this in historical context. We talked about the overlapping names. The first king of the northern kingdom is Jeroboam. Chapter 14 ends with Jeroboam the second. And so, there's probably a couple of hundred years between the first Jeroboam and the second Jeroboam. Well, from Jeroboam the second through chapter 15, you have these kings that are just kind of popcorn kings, 6 months, 1 month. Menahem's going to reign for, I think, 10 years, and then we get another king who reigns for 2 years, and then Pekah reigns for 20. But essentially, chapter 15 is recording one generation of kings. And it ends with Hoshea, who is going to be king when the Assyrians attack the northern kingdom and destroy it in 722 BC. So I say that because you made the comment, Alex, about how quickly things are deteriorating. You think about the journey from Jeroboam the first to this point, and it's been several centuries.
Yeah.
Now, from Jeroboam the second to the destruction of the northern kingdom, it all happens in basically a chapter. I think if you compare the two Jeroboams and the journey from 1 to 2 and then 2 from the exile, basically the sense you get from chapter 14 onward is things are spiraling out of control.
Yeah. What was a slow decline is now precipitous.
Yeah, it's
downfall.
a free fall.
Yeah. All right, Jim, tell us about the next king. So this is the third king, third Israelite king in this chapter.
Verse 17.
Yeah.
Okay.
We already know the worst thing he did, but we're going to get more info on him.
2 Kings 15, 17 and following. In the 39th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Menahem, the son of Gadi, began to reign over Israel. And he reigned 10 years in Samaria. And he did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh. He did not depart all his days from all the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. Pul, and if you're looking at the ESV, there's a footnote that says another name for Tiglath-Pileser III.
Probably his nickname.
Pul. Yeah, I mean, it's probably short
it's too
for
long, dude. We got to do something else.
Pileser, maybe, something like that.
Yep.
Anyway, Pul, the king of Assyria, came against the land. My wife always wanted to get a cat and name it Tiglath-Pileser III, but to this point, we never have done it. But maybe one day.
Funny.
Yeah, that's a great name, isn't it? Anyway, I don't think Pul would appreciate us naming our cat after him. But anyway, Pul, the king of Assyria, came against the land, and Menahem gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver, that he might help him to confirm his hold on the royal power. Menahem exacted the money from Israel, that is, from all the wealthy men, 50 shekels of silver from every man. How many wealthy men were there, Sam?
20.
There you go. Very good. You did that math really quickly, or maybe you already thought through it.
Well, no, I got super nervous when you asked me, and so I was like,
Said a random number.
I got to figure this out quick.
No, it's what is it? 1,000 shekels of silver. That's
right.
And he took 50 from each.
Yeah.
So,
hey, on Bible Talk, you can also learn basic math.
there we go. Anyway, 50 shekels of silver from every man to give to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay there in the land. Now the rest of the deeds of Menahem and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Menahem slept with his fathers, but notice no burial notice. So that, there's part of it, but not all of it. And Pekahiah, his son, reigned in his place.
Okay, so we've talked about how Menahem is like Pharaoh, and here we read. So Jim, you read the verse. Can you just summarize in a sentence what he does, like what he's described as doing?
Well,
would you say it's right that he's stealing from his people to pay off?
He's the government
because he's afraid of.
He's the king, so he's taxing the people to raise money to make a deal with the king of Assyria to pay him off. It's almost like he's saying to the king of Assyria.
So it's not quite stealing, unless you believe all taxation is theft, which we're not here to talk about that today.
Thank you. Yeah. It's almost like I think the calculation with the king of Assyria is you can either attack us and kill us and plunder our wealth, or I can gather this sum of wealth that maybe will satisfy you and give it to you, and then you don't attack us and kill us and destroy our stuff.
But
yeah. And who knows, maybe he's able to go, depending upon his diplomatic savvy and his standing with the population, he may be able to go to these wealthy guys and say, look, you give me 50 shekels of silver, you keep your nice palace, you keep your children, we maintain our lifestyle and so forth. You don't give me this 50 shekels of silver, you see that army out there. Maybe they come and burn your house down and take your wives off captive and all the rest.
So you're not necessarily evaluating these behaviors as fearful, cowardly, sinful.
Not necessarily.
You're saying we just don't have enough information.
Yeah,
I mean, we know what kind of guy he is based on the previous passage, but
we don't
as
have,
it pertains to the socio-political situation described here.
We don't have a situation or a passage like in Isaiah that's going to compare to what we're going to have in Second Kings 16, where we read about what Ahaz is going to do. And in Isaiah chapter 7, Ahaz is in a similar situation, and Isaiah is saying to Ahaz, you need to fear Yahweh. You shouldn't fear these foreign powers. Yeah. You should fear Yahweh. We don't read in one of the prophets of Hosea or Micah or Amos, contemporaries of Isaiah, or even Isaiah himself, saying these things to Menahem. But I suspect that there were believing people who had circumcised hearts who were thinking these things, both in the north and the south, thinking things like, rather than buy off this foreign king, we should be crying out to Yahweh and trusting him to deliver us.
Yeah, does this question make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. This is, we're seeing realpolitik, right? But it's not a positive picture. Israel shouldn't be in this situation. They shouldn't be a vassal state to a greater power. And interestingly, this is the first time Assyria shows up in the Book of Kings.
Oh yeah,
and
really?
So
you just kind of assume I guess you're right.
We've seen Syria as a major player. This is the first time Assyria shows up in the passage, which is interesting given the fact that in the very next chapter.
So we've seen what's his name, Ben-Hadad.
That's right,
and those guys. The other guy's name,
Hazael.
There's a Shishak.
That's King of Egypt.
Yeah, Pharaoh.
King of Egypt. Yeah,
cat name.
There you go.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I said the next chapter. It's actually chapter 17, where Assyria comes in and destroys Israel. So you know what Menahem? Yeah, that's right. What Menahem is doing is ultimately he's buying time, but it doesn't work. If it's that age-old lesson. If you give in to bullies, they're just going to keep bullying you. And it ultimately doesn't work for Menahem. They need the Lord to come rescue them, but they're not
you were
following.
Going to say, if you try to ride the tiger, you can never get off him because he's going to eat you.
Okay,
I thought you were going to say, if you ask for an inch, they'll give you a mile. Something like that.
You're just making things
No,
up.
that is a phrase. I definitely mangled it, but
and I think it's interesting to compare. It's interesting to compare. How is it that Menahem relates to the people of Israel, and how is it that he relates to these Gentile nations? Well, he is, I think, cowardly and submissive, and just like, here's our money. And what he wants from it, he wants Assyria to help him hold on to power, to confirm his hold on the royal power. And how is it that he treats his own people? Well, he rips the pregnant women open.
Yeah, you're right. Verse 19 might have a subtle, that's if this is his motivation.
Yeah, right. This is the type of guy we're dealing with.
All right, Sam, why don't you do the next king?
Sure. Verse 23, Pekahiah, in the 50th year of Azariah, king of Judah. So now we're coming up near to the end of Azariah's reign. Pekahiah, the son of Menahem, began to reign over Israel and Samaria, and he reigned 2 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. And Pekah, the son of Remaliah, his captain, conspired, that's the third time it's used, conspired against him with 50 men of the people of Gilead, and struck him down in Samaria, in the citadel of the king's house, with Argob and Arieh. He put him to death and reigned in his place. Now the rest of the deeds of Pekahiah and all that he did, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel.
Yeah, all we're given for this guy is that basically he gets murdered by a conspirator. Jim, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I would just observe here that, what kind of country is it where somebody can just come along and assassinate the king and make themselves the king? Yeah. It's not a country with a prophet. It's not a country with any kind of concern for the prophetic word or the prophetic anointing of the king. It's almost like a banana republic. This is just craziness.
Yeah. Del Ralph Davis in his commentary has some line like, at this point in Israel's history, they're better at producing assassins than real leaders.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is essentially the picture that you get in this chapter.
Yeah.
You should invite him to Southern to do something.
I've never met him. I don't.
He's got to be.
I don't know him.
He blurred my Genesis book.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well done.
As As did you. And you.
I was
Praise
happy
the
to
Lord.
do
I
it.
wrote the foreword.
Yeah, you. Very kind.
Yeah.
Very kind. All right.
All right, next.
Did you do the last one?
I did.
Did you do this one? I mean, we didn't have much to say about him. So
Oh, can I just?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, verse 25, we get this guy Pekah, the son of Remaliah, and he's going to show up in Isaiah 7, and we're going to read about him some more as we proceed here.
So, verse 27, in the 52nd year of Azariah, king of Judah, so this is the final year, the son of Remaliah began to reign over Israel and Samaria, and he reigned 20 years. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel sin. In the days of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser,
or as his buddies call him,
Pool,
Yeah.
king of Syria, came and captured Ijon, Abel-Beth-Maacah, Janoah, Kedesh, Hazor, Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and he carried the people captive to Assyria. So even before the formal destruction of the northern kingdom in 722 and the exile of the northern kingdom into Assyria, we're already beginning to get. I mean, this is kind of it's a foreshadow of the exile, but it's also the beginning of the exile. Yeah. This is the beginning of the end. He's taking the people captive.
The march on Paris has begun.
Yeah, that's right.
They've just entered. Yeah.
Then Hoshea, the son of Elah, made a conspiracy against Pekah, the son of Remaliah, and struck him down and put him to death and reigned in his place in the 20th year of Jotham, the son of Uzziah. Now the rest of the acts of Pekah and all that he did, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel.
So we end 1531 with Israel essentially on the precipice of being conquered.
Yeah.
This is the last king. They've already begun to lose land, and it's only a matter of time before this temporary arrangement that, what's his name?
Hoshea.
No, who was the guy who paid off?
Menahem.
Yeah, Menahem.
Back in verse 19.
Yeah.
The temporary arrangement that he was able to pull off, it didn't last.
Yeah.
We just got one more king. Jim, you want to lead the way?
Sure, verse 32. In the second year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, Jotham, the son of Uzziah, king of Judah, began to reign. So I'm not sure whether this is talking about a sort of co-regency with his father Azariah, or this is assuming Azariah's death and now Jotham is the only king in power. Either way,
co-regency because of his leprosy.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Verse 33, he was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok. And he did what was right in the eyes of Yahweh, according to all that his father Uzziah had done. Nevertheless, the high places were not removed. The people still sacrificed and made offerings on the high places, worshiping Yahweh in places other than the temple in Jerusalem. He built the upper gate of the house of Yahweh. Now the rest of the acts of Jotham and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? In those days, the Lord began to send Rezin the king of Syria and Pekah the son of Remaliah against Judah. Those are the two guys that are going to threaten Ahaz in Isaiah chapter 7. Mm. And then verse 38, Jotham slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, his father. So there's kind of the full formula that marks the end of a good king. And as we noted, you don't have that with a number of these scoundrels. So he was buried with his fathers in the city of David, his father, and Ahaz, his son, reigned in his place.
Okay, so we are reading throughout this passage primarily about Assyria's sort of tightening stranglehold on Israel.
Yeah, they're encroaching.
And then here we have at the end, and all these Israelite kings, as we've noted, are bad, right? Very unambiguously bad, we might say. Here we've got two good kings in the south, and then we still have that curious verse 37, which I think does come as a surprise that the Lord is, even as the good kings are, I mean, certainly in contrast to Israel, worthy of the title.
Yeah.
The Lord is still sending what will become, in a generation or century and a half later, the end of Judah. So verse
35, nevertheless, the high places were not removed.
Sure.
The people. So I think the author, it's like he's saying, okay, yeah, this was a good guy, but he's not following the Torah.
Yeah.
He's not doing everything the Torah commands. And so in a way, the author of Kings is justifying the exile. This is exactly what Leviticus 26 tells us is going to happen. As Moses says, the Lord will discipline for your sin, and then if you return to him, he'll show mercy to you. And then if you sin some more, he's going to discipline you again sevenfold for all your sin. And there's this pattern of repeated iniquity followed by repeated discipline. And ultimately, it's going to culminate in an exile. But as we're going to see when we get to Ahaz, the next guy, he's terrible.
Yeah.
And if we compare what we read in 2 Kings 16 to Isaiah chapter 7, it's a really dark picture.
I think it's interesting to think about the structure of this passage and what is that structure intending to communicate. You've got Uzziah at the beginning, whose leprosy is noted because he doesn't obey the Lord. And then you have at the end, Jotham, who's a good king, but who doesn't take down the high places. And then you have this mention of Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, and what we know about them from Isaiah 7 and the message of Isaiah 7, which is, don't try to ally yourself with other foreign powers in order to defeat them. You need to trust the Lord, and the Lord's going to give you the sign. So you have two kings in Judah who are generally faithful, but there are ways in which they're not following Yahweh, not trusting the Lord. Then at the center of this chiasm, you have Menahem, who makes an alliance with Syria and looks to Syria in order to Assyria in order to protect his hold on the royal power and
stave off destruction.
Yeah, stave off destruction. I think if you kind of compare the margins with the center, I think you're just getting a comprehensive picture of all of Israel's missteps. Not a complete obedience to Yahweh, disobedience to the Torah, looking to foreign powers, and then Menahem ultimately allying himself with Gentile nations in order to serve himself. The picture from top to middle to bottom is entirely corrupt. What is it that Israel should be doing? Trusting in Yahweh and obeying the law. Mm-hmm. And that's not what we see in any of these individuals.
This is going to be pretty inexact, so hopefully you can help me. So I'm just, struck by God's obvious sovereignty and all this. Verse 37, the Lord sent these folks. And there's the passage, I think it's in Isaiah. This is where the inexact begins, where it talks about how he uses the foreign nations as like an axe.
Oh yeah, Isaiah 14.
And is that talking in that context? Is that talking about Israel or Judah?
It's actually so he says Assyria is my axe,
okay.
And then he says, will the axe boast over the one who wields it? So these foreign nations, like we saw when we were in Samuel with the Philistines, if the Philistines triumph over Yahweh, they think Dagon has defeated. Or if the Philistines triumph over Israel, they think Dagon. So they proclaim the good news in the house of Dagon. And the author of Kings is saying, oh no, it's not the foreign god who's triumphing over Yahweh. It's Yahweh who's using these foreign powers to discipline his people.
So you could say like the author of Kings, who wrote after Isaiah, is probably was familiar with Isaiah's prophecy, and he's theologically reflecting on the poetic language Isaiah uses. You said Isaiah 14?
Yes, that's
so
right.
that he otherwise would have known that God is sovereign anyway, but he puts it right in here anyway, which is a clear reflection of that passage in Isaiah. Which
if it is Jeremiah that wrote Kings, there are clear places in Jeremiah where he's quoting Isaiah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well done. Any other concluding comments?
I'm good.
So next week, where are we headed? We've got the long chapter on Judah. Which you've already sort of flagged as this is going to show like it's not really any better in Judah. So that's what we'll cover next week in 2 Kings 16, Lord willing. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for listening and watching, I suppose. And always remember Psalm 111, verse 2, great are the works of the Lord, studied by all who delight in them.
For more articles, books, and podcasts, please visit 9marks.org.